Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of many sessions in our Cybersecurity Showcase Week. This is the first one. We're kicking off with definitely the best presenters and host for you. We're excited to welcome you back to the ISF Bright Talk channel. If this is your first time of joining, then it's great to have you here. There's lots happening throughout the week. I'm chairing a few sessions, lot of variety, so plenty to get your teeth into. But in this webinar, we'll explore how to identify and protect your organization's most valuable information assets, the crown jewels, if you will. My name is Mark Ward. I do research at the ISF, mainly on emerging risks and threats, but I help with a lot of the other topics we tackle as well. Done quite a bit of work on governance, a bit on AI, machine learning, and helped out with some work that we've done, ongoing work we've done on leadership, how to be a CISO, some of the pitfalls of that tricky job. This session about the crown jewels will last about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll do a Q&A, but by all means feel free to post your questions while our presenter Richard Absalom is talking. Share the queries in the chat. We'll get to them as they pop up. And also note that this session will be recorded and available on demand on the ISF channel after the session ends. And without further ado, I will pass over to Richard Absalom, who is your presenter on Crown Jewels for today. Richard, stage is yours.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for introducing me. And hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. So just a quick introduction to myself before we get started and why you're listening to me and not anyone else. I'm Richard Absalom, analyst on the research team at the ISF. I've been here close to 10 years, been involved in lots of different research projects. Most recently, we have literally just published an update to our work from 2016 on protecting the crown jewels. And yeah, that's what I'm going to talk through, why it's still such an important topic and why we've had to update it and what you can do to identify and protect what is mission critical to your organization. But of interest as well, I also worked fairly recently on a suite of reports around security culture and kind of the human-centered security, that side of it, and that's obviously a really key part to talk about in terms of protecting the crown jewels, and will be something we'll be touching on for the rest of this week. As we know, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Lots of organizations kind of running campaigns and systems and trying to build up that kind of secure culture within an organization is something I'm fairly passionate about. I think it's absolutely critical to anything we do around security. Very much a believer in this idea that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you haven't got a good security culture, then listening to all the strategies that we can talk about and getting the right technical controls in place is only going to get you so far. So yeah, really hope that you enjoyed the various webinars and sessions this week, but not only through this week, take it away and actually go and try and build that culture within your organizations just to make security part of business as usual. So to the main point, what are crown jewels? So we debated whether we continue using this word, but essentially for us, when we talk about crown jewels, these are mission critical information assets. And you could add in processes to that as well, but essentially what we're talking about here is that very tip of the pyramid. And we think of the type of information that organizations have. You need to go and classify it first and foremost on what's important to the organization. And you can have very important information, but is it actually mission critical? Does it actually keep the business running? So the way we look at this is identify your mission critical processes first. So security is here to help support the business, and what do business people think about? It's processes, right? Will the payroll systems work? Will online sales systems work? Will the manufacturing systems work? So that the processes behind that are what's key. The information that supports those processes we call mission critical. So we're talking about the very most important stuff here. Think about what would happen if these processes fell over. Essentially, what happens to your business?
Rich, if I just threw in, I wonder do organizations have a lot of these kinds of things? I guess I asked that question because that there's a lot that businesses do, and I would imagine everybody in charge of those different parts would say, yeah, of course, some of the most important parts. I just wonder, is that one of the hard parts of this? Just or is it actually very straightforward? Because once you do the analysis, it becomes obvious what you need to.
No, it's a good question. It's easier said than done to identify these crown jewels. We say what's mission critical, but yeah, absolutely. One of the after 10 years of trying to do this, a lot of our members will talk to us about what their challenges are, and identifying what is actually a crown jewel is still one of the greatest issues. And part of that is over identification. So I've heard a lot of people talk about going out to different parts of the business, and they come back with a list of hundreds of different information assets, because each business unit has come up with what's critical to them. But then you've got to think through, okay, you really need executive buy-in at this point. You need someone at the top or with a view across the whole business to understand literally what is mission critical. So what think about if there are 5 or 6 things you could get up and running again. If everything fell over, what would those processes be? And you've got to be quite ruthless in terms of that decision making. So a couple of members I spoke to said, that as a rule of thumb, they have somewhere between 10 and 15% of their processes they would call mission critical, but that obviously differs between every organization. So that's not a hard and fast rule. But then, some might say that that's fairly high. So yeah, it really depends within your organization how many of these you have. But obviously it's a good question, and it's got to be business people that lead that identification process to actually understand, this is what is critical. I think with all of this, security people can't be telling the business what's critical. It's got to be the other way around.
Yeah, and I guess as well, part of this is part of the benefits and of this is that investigation as much as anything else, because that understanding what your business does, that's a key information security step.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, we're going to do just a bit of engagement here. So we've got to talk about the actual crown jewels. So if we think about one of the local family businesses in the UK, you may have heard of them, called the House of Windsor, own some fairly substantial and expensive jewels that they call the crown jewels. They charge a lot of people to go and view them. These are the mighty warriors that guard them at the Tower of London. But when this brings up a question for me, which is, when we think about our definition of the crown jewels, are the UK royal family's crown jewels actually their crown jewels these days? Are they mission critical to the UK royal family business? So yeah, we're going to run a quick poll if we can here, just if you're able to tee that up, Mark. See what the audience thinks. Are the crown jewels really the crown jewels? Pretty simple. Yes, no, or don't know response. I think we'll give you a few seconds to answer that. Let's we get in.
You remind me where the controls are for that, Rich? Sorry.
I think. Looks like we've got it running. I think so.
It's already going. Okay, sorry.
We'll give people a few.
Yes, the poll is hiding off to the side there.
So yeah, it's an interesting one. This we asked, in terms of the name of the crown jewels, we did ask our members, do we keep calling this the crown jewels? Is the name still relevant? Strangely, it was most people in the UK thought we might want to change it because they weren't sure if the name would translate outside of the UK, but actually everyone else I spoke to was fine with it. So we kept it. So 10 years after originally publishing the research, the phrase still very much makes sense. So I'll just give you a few more seconds for some responses to come in.
It's a very nice hat, that, isn't it?
Yeah, as we might say, worth a few bob.
Right, how do people know you're king or queen? Or is that you wear a big hat? People go, "Oh, must be important." Then. But that's part of the point, isn't it? Just they need that. People go, "Oh, right, I haven't got that." Yeah,
brought out every 50 years or so. Okay, let's end that poll. So at the moment, looking at the data, we've got 70% of people saying no, 14% yes, and 14% don't know. So look, only the royal family can tell you what are their real crown jewels, what's mission critical. But yeah, I'm kind of on side with the people that say no. When I think about what's mission critical to the UK royal family, first thing first is reputation. Their reputation needs to be solid in order to survive as a family business. So they're very careful about curating that image. And the other side, I would say, is the deeds to the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, which provide them with most of their income. and get passed down from generation to generation. So protecting those two processes, assets, whatever you want to call them, is probably more important to the royal family business than the crown jewels. That is not to say the crown jewels are not important, and that's the point we want to get across about, you know, an organization's crown jewels. They can still be valuable. They can still be very important. Absolutely, you do not want them to be compromised. There's a reason there's very heavy security at the Tower of London. No one wants those things to be stolen. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily absolutely critical to the business. So moving on, talking about just what we mean by what are we protecting. I want to get beyond thinking about cybersecurity only here. It's about information security, and what we mean by that is information can be presented in digital form, but you've got to remember it's also physical. It could be printed, it could be hanging around offices, it can be on posters, it can be left on a printer. It's also spoken or in your head. So this can be, you know, you can compromise information by overhearing a conversation or by someone kind of thinking out loud. So what we call this is a footprint. Essentially, information sits within people, with people, with devices, in business applications, on infrastructure, in various different physical locations. And when we think about protecting the crown jewels, we need to take all of that into account. So it's not just cyber threats and kind of digital information we're thinking about. It's okay, information in all its forms, how might it be compromised? Just a note saying my volume's low. I'm going to try and improve that. So how do we identify and value potential crown jewels? So we talked about kind of understanding from a business point of view what's critical, but that could think about, okay, what drives revenue and profits first and foremost, or sales volumes and share price. Think about operational effectiveness. So is there something that's giving you any kind of competitive advantage? Do we have any kind of thing that gives us a unique process or a differentiator? Think about reputation, like I just mentioned with the royal family, but also think about what kind of attributes relate to that information. How long will it last? What's the expected lifespan of that asset? Is that going to change the value during its lifespan? Because again, that might have an impact on whether something is a crown jewel now versus whether it is in 2 years, or what new crown jewels are emerging. So it brings to light an important point that this is a kind of a never-ending story in some ways. There's no linear process for saying, right, we've identified our crown jewels, now we just have to protect them and never worry about that again. There's a continuous process here of keeping on identifying what's most important to the business. And then think about, where does it sit on the balance sheet? Do you have different characteristics that change its value? But I think the key thing, and what's really different and what's emerged over the last 10 years, is thinking about the minimum viable company. So like I've said, if everything went down, you could only get, say, 10 processes, maybe 5 processes running again. What would they be? We're talking here about extinction-level attacks, which is another area of research we've looked at. The number of these types of attacks have really grown since the onset of ransomware, and over the last few years we've seen it in a few different organizations, or a few different specific types of attacks, going back to stuff like NotPetya back in 2017. But also think about kind of the recent spate of attacks on the retail market, for instance. Who in your business knows that? That's probably the first question to go out and ask from a security point of view. Who is actually going to be able to tell you what those processes are? Is it someone that is like an executive level, the COO? Is it all the different business process owners across different parts of the business? That's probably quite a hard question to answer, but the most important one to sort out early on. And it will be different in every business, depending on the size, what you do, kind of how siloed or federated different parts of the organization are. I think it's really important to kind of go out and understand that sooner rather than later, to help us work out, okay, this is what we need to identify as absolutely critical to our business. So the threats to crown jewels, I've alluded to them a little bit already, but we've broadly divided threats into accidental, adversarial, and environmental threats. And this is where the researchers, the way we've updated it is differentiated a little bit. The focus when we first did this report, this research back in 2016, was very much on adversarial threats, breaching the confidentiality of information. Because that was seen as the most important thing. You've got to protect, the confidentiality, the secrecy of this critical information. And the list of adversaries, in that sense, hasn't changed that much in the types of people that are out there. Definitely organized criminal groups targeting organizations more and more. We see nation states at it a lot more these days as well. But also, the likes of hacktivists, extremist groups. Nothing particularly new there. But what's changed, as I said, in those last few years is, well, it's not just adversarial threats we need to think about. Accidents, whether that's from kind of human error or negligence, or some kind of technology or infrastructure failure, business process failure or a misconfiguration. Those can have just as bad an impact as someone actually deliberately hacking into an organization. And equally, environmental threats. So environmental incidents like flooding, fire, taking out various facilities such as data centers, or physical damage like you might have an accident, car crashes, plane crashes, again into kind of infrastructure, can have a disastrous impact on the crown jewels. So those are different types of threats, but also the focus is no longer, it can't just be on confidentiality anymore. If we think about the rise of ransomware, that's all about targeting availability of information. So businesses really need to think more about, okay, how do we protect the availability? And that's very much, that's where accidents will have an impact, just making information systems unavailable. You might not worry so much about them actually being stolen at that point. But integrity of information is also becoming increasingly important, especially in the world now being driven by AI systems and processes, right? So many businesses will probably count as crown jewels now some of the large language models that they're using to, kind of drive on various different business processes. And those are based on data, which, and if the integrity of that data is bad or has been poisoned in some way, then you get really bad business, process outcomes. I think, Mark, you might have posted recently, we were discussing this idea of work slop, right? So kind of about 40% of the time spent used on AI output is correcting the output that it's giving you.
Yeah, which is kind of odd, because you think, isn't it supposed to speed things up, and yet you spend a lot of time correcting it, but it doesn't seem particularly intelligent. But
That's bad data, right? That's why it comes up with.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah, there's a lot of those language models. Have very problematic data, basic data in as their foundations. But I wonder, does the report go into examples of all these categories? I know you mentioned a few. I mean, I guess it's hard to enumerate all of them, but
so we can only have a look at examples, and there are so many things going on. But in terms of adversarial attacks, if we think back to NotPetya in 2017, obviously just took down a whole, that was something pretending to be ransomware. That and WannaCry happened at fairly similar times. That obviously reduced a lot of organizations to just not having any processes up and running. And it's where we kind of started doing our work on extinction level attacks and putting together that playbook on, okay, what do you do when you need to only get, when everything has gone dark and you need to get back up and running. But recently, again, you see the adversarial attacks on, what's in the news right now, Jaguar Land Rover. That's true. In the UK, I don't want to be too UK specific, but stuff you think about what's happened to Harrods and Co-op and M&S.
Marks and Spencers as well.
Yeah, the retail, the spades on the retail sector. So that if you take out the ability to do business online, that's probably one of your crown jewels when you think about how much money that is earning the company. But accidentally, you think about worldwide, you think of that misconfiguration between CrowdStrike and Microsoft last year.
Yeah.
And that the impact that had on so many customers, and that wasn't a cyber attack, that was an accident. That was a misconfiguration of an update. And just the impact that had, it was relatively short term, but the cost that would have had to everyone using it is quite high, but also to CrowdStrike itself in terms of its share price and
reputation and all kinds of things. I was trying to get to Barcelona that day, did not get on the plane.
So annoyed one customer at least. But yeah, it's
my wife particularly, because she booked it all. But there we go. But yeah, I think, but it was definitely. I think the interconnected nature of those things is increasingly that. But I wonder if that makes it harder to pick out these things out, because as an organisation, when you're considering crown jewels, does the supply chain start to figure into that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's still one of the key kind of vectors in there, and we've seen rogue supplier or vendor or partner. Now that might be an adversarial threat we've listed here, but yeah, any one of those, it can fit in under any one of those accidental type threats as well. So yeah, this idea of where you protect your information, who does it sit with? When we go back to a couple of slides, I mentioned information sitting across the footprint of it. All those that can be supplier infrastructure, supplier locations, supplier run business applications. It's a good point to bring up, because I think your information doesn't necessarily just sit within your organization.
And I guess as well, it's that modern understanding of what a business is. It doesn't end at your own perimeter, which is kind of part of the problem, really.
Yeah, and it's when it comes to controls, what we see is crown jewels will require and justify extra expenditure. And that might mean things like, we've seen some members go to pretty extreme measures in terms of how they control the crown jewels. Like, it never sits with a supplier. Some information will just never go to a supplier. Sometimes it will never go online. That people will literally have information sitting on a laptop that is never connected to the internet, is kept in a safe in a locked room, and is only ever accessed by certain people. Sometimes even in a Faraday cage to prevent it.
Wow.
So I'm not saying that's what you have to do with every piece of.
Do they have beef eaters patrolling around that safe as well?
Yeah, don't forget the beef eaters. But yes, it is. That's what we're talking about. If we think about the risk associated with a crown jewel, then you may be willing to spend a lot more money, time, resource, make it that much more difficult to use in order to secure that information. Like, everything controls. What controls the extent to which you control something is always risk-based, right? You don't want that if you put too many controls around crown jewels, like anything else that reduces the value of them or stops people actually using them, then that has a detrimental impact as well. You don't realize the reward based off that risk. So yeah, there's always a line to be towed, like a balance to be had. But yeah, when it comes to crown jewels, we'd normally say it's worth thinking more about extra security controls on these. And that's what we'll kind of get to here. So when we talk about adversarial threats, we talk about the attack chain. So pretty much every adversarial threat is going to go through some form of this attack chain, where they perform reconnaissance, gain access, maintain control, compromise information, and then exploit it. So that still rings true for adversarial threats. It is broadly mapped to things like the MITRE ATT&CK framework, but it's less kind of technical. We wanted to make it relevant for non-pure cyber-based attacks, right? Non-digital attacks. And in terms of controls you can put in place against it, again, we've chosen to use wording similar to the NIST cybersecurity framework, where you can look at controls that can identify, prevent, detect, react, and respond to those adversaries. And you can put these in place throughout the process. Now, some of these you might kind of call core or fundamental security controls you might have in place already. Others you might, they could be a bit more expensive, and you're only going to apply to crown jewels. So at the identify stage, stuff like honeypots, for instance, or kind of deception technologies. Yeah, they can be quite expensive to run, so you want to target them quite a lot. And through to stuff like extended detection and response. Again, it depends how much information or kind of how much you want to spend. But we know a lot of these can be fairly expensive, and you add in obviously stuff like AI-based detect and respond capabilities these days. Again, where do you want to apply those? So we are not going to spend ages going through each and every single kind of control here, but we kind of think you can, for adversarial controls, there are various different things you want to think about throughout that attack chain, and make sure you're considering the people and process and physical controls, as well as just the cyber ones here. When it comes though to accidental and environmental threats, they're a bit harder to address with an attack chain, right? They don't tend to go through a process like an attackable. They're kind of more a bit random. So what we decided to introduce and to look at is this kind of bow tie risk assessment model. And it's called an assessment model. It's really a good visualization. And you kind of think about what's the event that you don't want to happen at the center. And then the reason it's called a bow tie is you look out to the left, you see what causes that event, and on the right, the consequences. And then you think about, okay, what are the controls we can put in place to stop that event from happening, and what are the mitigations to lower the consequences. So now you can use this you can definitely use bow ties to cover adversarial threats. As I said, we're focusing on accidental and environmental because we think adversarial threats can be covered using the attack chain. But if you want to visualize things quite nicely, then bow ties can be used for any type of risk. And again, we chose to talk about bow ties because these are used outside of the cyber industry as well. So hopefully people, if you're talking to especially risk professionals, people in enterprise risk outside the cyber risk department, then it's good to have bow ties. And to be honest, that reinforces a point I haven't really said much yet, but we're talking about operational resilience and business resilience when we're talking about the crown jewels. This isn't just a cyber related issue. This is, if these things go down, the business fails. This is absolutely a business-wide problem. So let's use language that the rest of the business understands and tools and methods that everyone else can understand to kind of get the point across about how we need to control and protect the crown jewels. So let's look at an example bow tie here. So the system, the process we're interested in is the payroll system, right? So what might cause the payroll system to go offline from a non-adversarial point of view? So yeah, you might have a unsuitable cloud partner, misconfiguration of service, interruption, loss of power, failure of some of the technical infrastructure, or some damage to the facilities. And what happens if your payroll system goes offline? Well, it probably depends on the type of business you are, but if you're paying people on a daily basis, you've got lots of employees or contractors, and again, depending on how long the system is down for, you may just see people stop working because you can't pay them, which obviously leads to lost sales, loss of customer support, all the kind of reputational damage, maybe some product development stops. So when you look at that, okay, what are the controls? How do we stop that happening? Well, can we do better due diligence on our cloud suppliers? Do we have backup power systems in place to make sure this system keeps going? Do we have kind of a fail-safe on technical infrastructure? And in terms of mitigating those consequences, do you have any can there be something in a contract that enables you to pay people late? Are there any kind of redundant or backup or offline services you could turn to? And are you able to quickly bring in third-party contractors if required? So just we wanted to focus that absolutely. You could see an adversarial attack that takes a payroll system offline, but we wanted to get you thinking here. Yeah, okay. Let's take away the fact that we know people are targeting these systems. What are the accidents or environmental incidents that could also have an impact? And finally, we want to say the other way to look at it is that you can directly counter threats